Hi, Chris. Good morning from Germany. Good morning to you as well. Welcome to the call. I hope you join us again. What is your experience regarding investing in companies listed on different markets? For example, the United States and Germany. Is there a general rule? Thank you. That's a great question. So there's something called an ADR, which means American Depositary Receipt. And that means that if you're a company overseas and you want to list also on the US markets and in a foreign market, then you can do what's called an ADR. And a great example of this for German companies is SAP. So SAP is a great big German software company that's listed on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker SAP and on the DAX in Germany with the ticker SAP.gr. And what happens is sometimes there's a little bit of an arbitrage opportunity because the U.S. markets close after a couple hours after the European markets close. And usually in after hours trading, if it's a liquid stock, in between the gap of when the U.S. market's still open and the German market, for example, is closed, that stock trades and closes that arbitrage gap, so to speak. Now, in terms of doing due diligence on companies listed on various markets, it's all the same to me. You check out the management team first, and then what you do is you just build out your financial model. And if you have questions on how to build out a financial model, please take my course called the Complete Financial Analyst Training and Investing course. And companies I'll give you the example just with the United States, because the United States, you have to file your quarterly and annual reports called your 10Q and 10K on what's called SEC.gov. In different markets, you have to do the same thing. In many markets, like in Canada, it's not called SEC.gov. It's called CEDAR, CEDAR. Now, foreign companies have to file what's called a 20F if they're an ADR listed on U.S. markets. So I can pour through those financial documents and learn as much as I can about the company. My next resource, if I can't find an annual report on SEC.gov for foreign listed companies here, is I go to that company's website and then I go to investor relations. So, for example, and let's do this together. This might be fun. Let's go to investor relations for SAP. So I'll just type here SAP Investor Relations. And before you invest, here it is here. Before you invest in a big company, they usually have an investor relations portion of their website you should check out. And on this website, they usually offer the quarterly report, the annual report, the S1 filing if it's a recent IPO, and also the 8K. And 8K is basically a very important press release, something material that the whole world needs to know at the same time, like when the company reports earnings. They also quite often have these massive PowerPoint decks here that have a lot of information on the company through what's called an investor relations event. And so I used to go to these events at the headquarters of companies, and to make it fair for the whole world, what happened is the government in the United States says that if you have one of these analyst events for companies listed on U.S. markets, you have to also webcast it or make it available to everybody on the planet at the exact same time, which is often, and that's part of what's called Regulation FD, which stands for Fair Disclosure, which gives people like you and I access so we can compete with the big mutual funds and hedge funds. Now, let's go through this website here. And quite often, if you didn't get a chance to listen to the investor event live or watch it live on a webcast, you can get the replay here. And also, quite often, you can download podcasts of recent earnings conference calls. And you can also download, if available, financial models. And some companies provide it to you in Excel as well, so it's easier for you to build out your financial model. And I've gone to actually to SAP's headquarters a couple of times in Waldorf, Germany. I had to land in Frankfurt and take a 2-hour drive with a taxi on the Autobahn, which rocked to meet with management. And I was able to ask management a lot of questions and do my due diligence. And so it's just like for me investing in an American company or Canadian company or Brazilian company or German company. For me, I ask all the same types of questions, along the lines of not just the quality of the management, but I ask questions like this. How should we think about, and this is generic for every company, how should we think about your product portfolio in the long run? And what might happen there is the executive answering that question might tell you strategically, without violating any covenants or inside information, tell you longer term what they might be thinking of. So for example, and this is hypothetical, if I were to meet with Reed Hastings, the brilliant founder and CEO of Netflix, and I asked him, again, this is hypothetical, what should we be thinking about longer term in terms of the media strategy for Netflix? And quite often what they'll do is they'll say something along these lines, and it'll be somewhat generic, but they'll help you out a bit. They'll say, well, in the very long run, in addition to streaming, we might consider not only streaming movies and television programs, but also other media contents like games. It's something that we might potentially do. And you can also ask other questions, generically speaking, like, what are the gaps in your product portfolio? And they might kind of let you know areas they're interested in longer term. So, for example, with SAP, which is a company that makes ERP software. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. Think of it as Microsoft Office for the whole company. Instead of Word, PowerPoint, Excel access, you get financials, accounting, manufacturing, procurement, etc. So with a company like SAP, years ago, they might have said something along the lines of, well, we'd be interested in doing a little bit more cloud offerings. They might have said that when they were primarily a client services-based or client server-based company years ago. Or they might have said something like, and they'd never tell you exactly, well, we might look into something along the lines of human resource-based software solutions in the long run, as that's one part of our product portfolio that we don't have filled out. And then lo and behold, in mid-December of 2011, what happened was SAP bought SuccessFactors, ticker was SFSF, which is a great HR company, human resources-based software company, which is cloud-based. And I'm not sure if they actually tipped the market about that specific area, meaning cloud-based HR. But if they were to do something like that, I had a big analyst event in front of lots of investors. They might do something like that so that if and when they were to announce a big acquisition of a company like SuccessFactors, then investors would not get upset. They'd kind of understand the direction and corporate strategy of the company. And they did the same thing with Cognizant as well, CTSH, which is financial services-based or accounting software, which is a smart acquisition. And so you can always get a wealth of information here, upcoming events as well. You can add this to your calendar. There's a call coming up, a financial analyst conference call, which everybody can be a part of. And I pride myself on taking what I've learned in the hedge fund and mutual fund industry and working on Wall Street and teaching everybody else that hasn't worked on Wall Street exactly how to access all this information, because you and I as retail investors, we have the same access to information as the professional investors do on Wall Street. Now, that's a beautiful thing. Let me just wrap this up here. So if we scroll down here, we see the quarterly report, half-year report, as well as a presentation and the presentation replay here for the second quarter and half-year 2000 results for SAP. So you can click through this. There's a wealth of information. And then you just scroll down and here's the integrated report, which is probably the annual report. And there's lots of other things you can download as well here. So if you have any follow-up questions on how all of this works from an investor relations perspective, please let me know. But the bottom line is that you and I have the exact same access at the exact same time to all financial information that the larger investment firms do. All right. Speaking of Germany, where's my Phil Germany book? Here it is here. Okay. I'm going to do this weekly. Okay. So Phil Germany, who's one of our awesome students, he wrote a book recently, and I love the title. It's prophetic. It's Super Students is what he called it. Anybody can write a book. All you got to do is just go to my website. And you don't have to enter your email or anything. Just go to my website, harounventures.com/writebook, all lowercase. And you should be able to download that template so you can make books like the ones Phil's made and all the other templates I've used for all my books. It all applies. It all applies. And think about how awesome it will be when you walk into an interview and you give them a book you wrote, or you're applying to a university and you give them a book you wrote, or you're meeting with a potential customer and you give them a book you wrote. You got to ask yourself, how badly do you want this job?